All right, welcome back for another episode of the Unplanned Show, where we have spontaneous conversations with guests across various disciplines and companies, talking about a lot of things that are unplanned. All the work that comes up, it wasn't part of your day, wasn't part of the project plan, and you urgently need to deal with it. With me today, I'm very excited. I have Heather Hinton, PagerDuty's own Chief Information Security Officer. And we're going to be digging into a topic that came up. She and I were sitting next to each other in the office a little over a month ago, and she started bringing up a topic to me. I was like, hold that thought. Let's bring this to the Unplanned Show, and we'll really unpack it there. But before we get into that, I do want to just kind of quickly go through what we've got lined up for upcoming episodes. Next week, we'll have Martin Van Son. We'll be talking about platform engineering, a topic certainly near and dear to my heart, but as Martin is one of our automation experts over in Europe, he's been seeing some interesting things with customers over there. Then on August 14th, we have James Urquhart from VMware, who is going to be talking about flow architectures. He recently published a book with O'Reilly in the last couple of years. And I was working with him back when he was doing a lot of that research and recently got to hear him speak about it. I think it's going to be a really interesting topic. And then on August 21st, very excited to have Mitra Goswami, who is PagerDuty's Senior Director of Data Science. And we're going to be catching her hot on the heels of a talk she's giving at DataCon LA on August 12th about generative AI. And so this is a chance, if you're not able to make that show, I won't be in Southern California that particular weekend. I believe I'm going to be at a soccer tournament with my son. And so that'll be my chance, and hopefully it'll be useful for all of you listeners to hear what she's got to say. So that's kind of our upcoming show. And I just want to also call out that the timing worked out really nicely to have Heather on this week's show, because just last week, PagerDuty was added to Fedramp, the Fedramp marketplace, as in process. And so that is something I know Heather has been really doing a tremendous job leading the effort, and has so many insights and learnings that she could share on that topic. But also just so round of applause and congrats to her.
Well, and to the whole team, right? Fedramp is just absolutely a reminder of it takes a village.
Yes. Yes, it's just tremendous to kind of see how teams across PagerDuty have pulled together for that. But today, slightly different topic: the idea of like the single security pane of glass, and this sort of notion of the single pane of glass for this or that or the other thing is certainly something we've talked about in various parts of IT for a long time. But you kind of had a thought on this, Heather, that I wanted to explore and just dig into a little bit more. So where have you been? I think I added the death part just because.
Yeah, no,
right, spicy headlines.
Go for the headline. The more specialized we become as an industry in terms of the types of things that we're looking at, the tools that we're using, the things that we have to respond to, the more enamored we become with certain ways of working. But no matter how we work, one of the things that is killer to everybody is interrupt-driven or unplanned work. And that was always, when you dug into it, kind of why people wanted a single pane of glass, because it was people, we would talk about the swivel chairs. You would sit there and you would have 5 monitors and you'd be going from one to the other, trying to make sure that you saw everything that was going on and that you were able to respond to something while trying to be distracted and looking at 5 different panes of glass.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where the single pane of glass came from. And for the longest time, that was this is really awesome. But when you go back, one of the things I love to do is go and look at, okay, so we've got this problem. Why do we have this problem? We have this problem because there are lots of different panes of glass, yes, but really because we're trying to deal with interrupt or unplanned work that is being provided to us by all of these different tools that have their different UIs that are being shown, one on each pane of glass. Wouldn't it be awesome if I didn't actually have to sit there and poll or look for this unplanned work? If I could just sit there and have things pop up when they were important and then get moved up, and they move up and down a priority list based on what is the most important, right? Going back to the old FIFO, first in first out, or first in most important, out first queue. And what we've been doing within our team in security and PagerDuty is using PagerDuty as a way to get rid of that single pane of glass, right? Focusing on, hey, what really matters is the interrupt. And if I don't have any interrupts, why am I spinning back and forth in my chair, getting dizzy because I'm looking at all of these panes of glass? Why don't I go and work on something, wait for that little interrupt, have that notification, and then I can go and look at my bespoke fit for purpose pane of glass. I'll get an alert that says, go look at this. So I go off and I look at that pane of glass that's designed for that. And I do that and I'm effective, and then it's done, and I come back and I keep on working. And then an alert comes in and says, go look at something else. And I head off and I go over to that bespoke fit for purpose pane of glass that makes it work. So, in a nutshell, getting rid of the security pane of glass and really focusing on how we work, going from poll, right? I'm always looking for something, to being notified or having data alerts pushed to me, has made us incredibly effective. And it has relieved this mental stress, this fog that sits on people because they say, I can't do anything because I've got to be constantly looking for an alert. And we're saying, you don't need to constantly look for it anymore because we'll tell you.
Yeah, I think that that sort of summarized it well, sort of shifting from the pull to the push. And it's what it sounds like is, okay, so swiveling between all these different panes of glass, the onus is on that person to be doing the searching, right? To look for something to be going wrong. And it's sort of like there's an irony almost in that. It's like the whole point is that we're trying to not be distracted, but then if we're not looking at the thing, then we're going to miss the thing. And so you really end up can't doing other work anyways, because it's like, well, if someone wasn't looking at that screen or that screen or that screen, then they might have missed something, and then we're in trouble. So, that's one thing. But I think I basically want to verify, do I have that right? That basically in the quest with any pane of glass, the problem is that you're looking at a pane of glass as opposed to getting work done.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's like the first part. And then the second part to me is almost like it's a trust question, but I realize like bringing the T word up with the chief information security officer probably has a lot of meaning.
So it's a loaded word.
It's a very loaded word, but I guess the idea of, there's already, you started to look at lots of different panes of glass because you couldn't trust that any one of them was going to have that sort of omniscience about what was going on.
Well, and because they were all really good at doing their own thing, and there was no one tool or magic wand that covered everything.
Yeah. And so I guess then my question is, how do you, if all the different views, right? If you keep stacking up more and more views because you can't really trust that any one of them knows it all, even as you shift from the pull to the push, how do you have that trust that even what is going to get pushed to you is taking everything in?
So I think maybe what you're asking is, how do I know that when I move to push, I'm just not going to be overwhelmed with push and now I have to prioritize? Is that what
Actually, well, that's a good question too. But where I was coming from is that you wouldn't miss something because, like, I mean, if you've kind of trained your whole career is like, hey, I have to we find stuff when we're looking at one of these screens. And now you're telling me stop looking at those screens. How do you kind of get that trust that you're actually not going to miss something?
Okay, so and I might have to sort of take my CISO hat off for this conversation, but I think there's a fallacy that we actually were really good at finding everything. I think that we tell ourselves this story that we were really good at it because we want to be. But I think there's a ton of evidence out there, all of the attacks out there that kind of get missed for so long, that says we really want to be good at it. We believe we're good at it, but we need to be a lot better at it. So, in terms of unplanned directions, this is why every tool vendor out there has added AI into their bag of tricks, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them were doing it for a long time before now. They were calling it machine learning, or they were just saying, hey, we're really good at it. But that's where things like machine learning and artificial intelligence now become our friend, because they can be so much better at those patterns that we've been missing.
Yeah.
And then it's a refinement, right? Whether it's me looking at all of these panes of glass and learning, oh, well, this was a false positive, or, oh, we missed this, or what did the root cause analysis tell us? I'll get somebody else to do it, to always refine, and then we'll just get better and better at the alerts.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That like it's you get kind of lulled into a false sense of authority.
Go on, say it. It's a false sense of security.
Well, a false sense of authority over the situation.
Yeah.
By like, well, I can look at this and I know what to look for in this dashboard, and I've been doing it for years, and I know how to kind of interpret all this. You get lulled into it because you get to do things as a human. But to your point, it's like trying to enable like lots of people to even know how to do that, and to be able to do it consistently.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they still might be missing things, and it can be very difficult to kind of correlate across multiple systems and sources, that there's certain things that are just machines are better at than people.
And there are also, I mean, let's be really, a lot of the stuff that comes up is noise.
Mhm.
It is noise. So the sooner we can get better at taking that noise off of our plate, the better we will be. And let someone else do all the hard work about the pattern matching, and let us focus on that inspiration of connecting dots that others hadn't connected, right?
Yeah. And so can you talk a little bit more about what does it look like, and kind of what you're seeing where, teams shifting from that pulling and doing all of that manually, to push, right? Just let it get
Right.
pushed to me. What do you see change in the, the team dynamic, and just what the team's able to accomplish when that happens?
So before, if somebody was on call for 8 hours, they got nothing done
Yeah.
because they were constantly polling, they were distracted, and even when there was quiet, they
Yeah.
couldn't kind of calm their brain down to be quiet.
Mm.
It's forced. It's like forcing people to engage in a ADHD type of behavior, right? Where
Yeah.
you're looking at every little thing, trying to find the shiny bauble. Where is the thing that I'm looking for? Now, after, there's this kind of fog, and this, I'm just using words that, for me, there's a fog in your brain that doesn't have a chance to gather, because you're able to focus on one thing. You might be interrupted. That's okay. You're willing to take the risk, and you can actually go and work on something. You make sure that you plan it for work where you can be interrupted, but you can actually get stuff done.
Yeah.
So it goes from having a day where you cannot do anything else and you walk out at the end of the day exhausted and demoralized, to a day where at the end of the day, you can say, not only did I accomplish a couple of things, but look, I responded to these things. You can actually show value and walk out of the day with a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And just thinking about how many different things, how many different types of work involve that sort of just ping ponging between like that sort of I remember hearing dopamine being described as the seeking neurotransmitter. You're constantly
Right.
engaged to seek, and so much of how we work these days just feeds off of it. But it doesn't necessarily mean productivity, and it
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean that sort of deeper satisfaction with like, "Oh, I got some things done." But you're in just that constant seeking mode of where is the next thing that I might need to go look at
Yeah,
coming from.
and it's exhausting, right? And then having to do that be on, let's say that you're on call for, 3 days or a week. You walk out of that and you can't do anything because you are so exhausted for what that's been doing to your brain, right?
Yeah.
For that time. For and you if you go and look in, different chat rooms and you talk to people who are on call, they'll all tell you it's exhausting. Even if there is nothing that actually I have to get on call for, it's still exhausting because I'm sitting there, am I going to miss something?
Yeah.
But if you can say, so to go back to trust, right? The trust now becomes not, am I trusting that I'm going to see something? I'm going to see a pattern. It's, am I trusting that I'm going to hear the alert, that I'm going to, get the phone call or the SMS or whatever it is that says, hey, go pay attention to this, right? Now, my trust is in whatever it is that's giving me the notification.
Yeah. So let's kind of like, I think I mean, everything you've described, it applies to a lot of different domains, right?
Sure.
Sort of anything, honestly, you can even someone who's working in PR and comms can relate with just, staying on top of a news flow. Um, but I'm curious now, like, let's shift specifically and talk about security. And in terms of like the security landscape today, what security teams and leaders are dealing with from a threat perspective. Tell me a little bit about how this approach is really relevant in it just with the current state of
Sure.
cybersecurity.
So, look, let me give you put this kind of into sort of an example slash story sort of thing. Um, Security in any company or security in your house or your school, it depends on people. At the end of
Mhm.
the day, we are the weakest link. Um, One of the things that we know is that having people who are engaged and are willing to say, "Hey, I saw this. Is it a problem? What do I do about this?" People who feel like they can come and ask for help or point something out, report something, that is one of our best lines of defense because they're going to see, they might see something. Hey, I clicked on this email, right? And
Mhm.
yes, we all have tools that'll say, warning in the emails and things. But I want people to be able to raise an alert and say, "Hey, I saw this email and it didn't really look right," or "I saw somebody trying to get into the building," or "Hey, my something was going funny," right? Um, all of those kinds of things are unplanned, but they're potentially hugely important for me for being able to say, maybe something is starting to go wrong way earlier in the chain than I would otherwise."
Mm.
Right, and so if I've got a person on the other end of that alert, so I can say, "Hey, Dormain, I saw something, it looked really funny," and I send you an alert, and I sit and I wait for you to reach it in Slack, but you're super busy, and you're not gonna look at Slack for the day. I get stressed, you might miss something. But
Mhm.
if we've got it set up for an alert where, I say, "Hey, Dormain, something's going wrong," and you immediately get alert that says, "Is this real?" And then you can push a button and say, "No, it's not, but thank you for reporting it because, that's what we want you to do." Everybody's really happy. I'm now productive because I'm not worried about things. You are comfortable because you've been able to make sure that your people are happy. But let's say 1 in 100, you look at that and go, well, holy cow, that shouldn't be happening.
Mm-hmm.
You're now able to go and respond on it. So you're in comms or marketing and somebody puts out a really poisonous tweet about your company. You are at work and something happens with an alert for your kids' security at their school, right? Like the day I missed the phone call that said there was a gas leak, not kidding, at my kids' school. And so they'd had to take all of the kids out and block off the highway. And they had the entire elementary school sitting in little groups on the highway, right? Please come and pick up your kids. Getting an alert like that in a push mode would have been way better.
Right.
Than a pull mode. So there are so many cases where, right, and you can feel your adrenaline, right? Every parent out there has had their adrenaline kind of go through the roof with that kind of thought. Knowing that you're just not going to miss those kinds of things because you've set up for all of those alerts, it makes it increases your chances of finding something before it has a chance to get out of control.
Yeah. And I think like what you're describing is how when those things when they're not acknowledged, right? Particularly in this sort of in the security scenario where if I'm just, playing back what I'm hearing, you want that the whole, like, if you see something, say something, you want everyone acting as
Right.
a vigilant participant. But if when they do that, it goes unacknowledged, then
You're not going to do it again. Right.
you
Yeah.
said they're stressful, but it's discouraging, right? Like, well, why
Right.
did I do that? So instead, and even if it's like, yeah, most of them end up being fine, it's the 1 in 100 or whatever it is that you actually just want to keep that channel open and flowing as a source of data alongside
Right.
all your other data. Is just how do we have
Right.
employees helping us, stay safe, secure,
Right.
all those things.
But it is. It gets back to, it's all about the people. And that, it has knock-on effects too, right? Because now we've reinforced that security, that you pay attention to it and that good things happen when you do this. It puts in a feedback loop that means that you're more likely to pay attention to it when you go home or when you're in, another place. But, and maybe I can sort of also bring it back to a single pane of glass, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of different sources, from a security point of view, of alerts that I can get, right? I can get alerts of somebody, of when I go to a known bad website, or I can get alerts if somebody is trying to put malware onto a workstation, or I can get alerts when I see an unrealistic number of attempts to log in to a web page, right? All of these different alerts are coming from different places, right? They're coming from web browsers, they're coming from workstations, they might be coming from mobile devices, they might be coming from web applications. Having all of those basically funnel into one place and then come into the same alerting to me. And now I can say, oh, I'm going to go and respond to this, or I'm really confident that that website that you're going to isn't going to do anything. We're going to ignore it and we're going to go focus on these brute force attempts at logging into whatever, or I can push a button to go and do an automated response. I'm seeing this kind of brute force attempt against this account. We're just going to go and block that account for right now so that nobody can do anything, so that nobody has any chance to be successful or whatever. So, the next step in the alerting that comes when you have that single pane of notification, that single source of notification, means that I can also start putting in place a single source of response.
Yeah. And how does this kind of play out in, today's market, right? Because there's I'm not even sure what all of these acronyms mean, right? XDR, SOAR. That's a new one. SOAR.
Yeah.
Security. I mean, I've always can't. It's just like how in German you've got the E and the I, and then you got the I and the E. SIM. I'm like, is it security incident event management or security event incident management? Anyways, it's one of those.
Right. And this is exactly the multiple pane of glass, because each one of these things is doing something different that they're very good at. SOAR is trying to, encompass it all. And there's another one that you might have run into, CNAP, Cloud Native Application.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of these, CNAP and SOAR are trying to become single pane of glass. But at the end of the day, none of my CISO friends and colleagues have an environment that has just one vendor, right?
Yeah.
They've probably got a SOAR from one company, a SIM from another company. They've got EDR or XDR from somebody else. They might have a managed security provider helping them look at stuff. They've probably got Gmail or G Suite managing their business, right? You start throwing them all in and I'm not kidding. You're up to 30 to 50 vendors that are playing a role one way or another in managing your business. And if every single one of them is going to put in, start complaining about something, again, we're back to you're going to drown. So even if you wanted a single pane of glass, you're just not getting there because there are too many things you have to look at.
Yeah. And CNAP, right? Anything that's kind of like cloud native is like, wow, that's clever and a super intelligent way of approaching things in my experience, but often like, well, that only covers a small percentage of what we actually do. Like any organization, any, enterprise that's been around for more than 4 years is going to have pre-cloud native things, right, in their architecture and their stack. And then they get bigger, you make an acquisition, before you know it, you've got just more than
mess. Yeah.
But it's like all the wonderful things in the Cloud Native Computing Foundation and all the sort of cloud native security approaches, amazing, except only apply in that environment, which is going to be a subset. So you still have to zoom out and take in the bigger picture. So okay, that's thank you for that, because I know that question sometimes just come my way, and I know we can take all that in as event data sources, and that kind of comes back to your sort of the model, which is that it's not about the pane of glass. It's just about what are the different event sources and how are you acknowledging them so that they continue to feed your overall sort of system. And then, I really like what you're talking about, where the security team can be on call and still get things done, right? Yeah. Like they can still be productive and working on things. You don't have to completely take them out of rotation to sort of then go into that ADHD mode.
Yeah. Well, and really it's all about making people effective by letting all of those fit for purpose, best in class things do what they're good at, right?
Yeah.
And then allow me to do what I'm good at, which is respond to something, figure it out, and then move it away again, right? Yeah. And the reality is everybody wants best in class, right? They're going to tell you that they'll, maybe not, but everybody wants the best, right? I don't know any people that run around and say, we want to be number 2. Everybody wants to be number 1, right?
That's generally what I see out there as well. Lots of folks going for number 1. So, what would you sort of recommend for folks sort of getting started on this path, and sort of how to sort of shift that mindset and model from, hey, instead of, taking the approach of just constantly scouring across different systems and sources of data, to like let the system notify you. Like how do you make that shift?
We sat down with the team. We spent, actually, all told, a couple of weeks. It was really hard to schedule it around everybody's on call. And we just, literally we had people write on sticky papers or in Lucid chart on, Lucid's little stickies. What are the things that get in the way of, what are the things that when they pop up or that you're constantly worried about missing? And it was this giant wall of all of the different things. And then we categorized, right? One of the things that, really are going to take a lot of time. What are the things that are really easy to respond, but are still interrupt driven?
Yeah.
And we picked those things that were easy And we just sat down and said, right, what can we do to make addressing those easy things better? What do we do? Do we feed it here? Do we feed it there? Do we write an automation? Do we, and we all brainstormed on what are the different things. We picked the easies, started with some easies, proved it out, got people comfortable with the fact that they didn't have to be eyes on all of these different things all at once, and got them comfortable with the fact that they weren't going to miss things.
Yeah.
Right. And to learn how to work with where you were no longer responsible for identifying something, you could shift your responsibility from identify and respond to simply respond.
Mm.
Because it is a shift in how you work, and it can be challenging because especially if you're used to being on call, you're conditioned to cannot miss something.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure, some folks kind of pride themselves on their
Sure.
ability to do that identification. And in this case, you're asking them to change a little bit of their identity, right? Which is, your identity is not the identifier.
Well, you don't have to be the one that is calling Superman or calling Clark Kent. You just get to go and be Superman after he's changed in the phone booth, right?
Right. And that's the part that matters. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And once people figure it out and they've done it a little bit and they are comfortable with, and they see how, again, that brain fog kind of lessens and they're actually able to get things done, they're all on board. And then you've kind of unleashed this avalanche, and you've got to try to, be mindful of doing this in an ordered way so that you don't throw everything in there and by accident miss something, right? You've got to do orderly onboarding.
Okay. So, yeah, I like that, get the team together, hash out, empty all the brains of these are the things, and identify, hey, these are the ones that are easy, but just they're noisy, and they're interrupting us all the time. And I'm just sort of making sure that I've heard everything. Okay.
Yeah,
And
no, get
sort
rid of all of that really. Okay, so we call them SLJs, which stands for, S little jobs.
Yeah.
You can silly little jobs.
Silly little jobs. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure, for the sort of the SRE and platform engineering crowd, it's the toil.
Right.
It's kind of like that. And in this case, it's very driven by sort of what all this noise from different systems is coming from. Okay. And then any other sort of best practices or things to look out for? I mean, I'd love to ask, what are some of the examples of the SLJs that are like, these just don't need to be people's jobs anymore?
A lot of them are related to suspicious emails where people just don't trust your email filtering. A lot of them are related to access requests. I need this new role. A lot of them are related to actually looking for suspicious behavior or waiting for alerts from a suspicious behavior from your SIM, configuring your SIM to just send it straight in so that you can. And that's I guess one piece that we sort of didn't really touch on. A lot of these tools are coming up with their own alerting mechanisms, right? Like, they will send you this, but it's a variation of a single pane of glass, because then I've got, multiple different alerting. So we will route things into a single alert so that I'm always looking and listening for the same type of ping, right, on what's going on. So suspicious and abnormal behavior in logs, in behavior that you've just flagged as it's privileged and I want to have an eye on it no matter what. And then anything that's coming in through channels like Slack or email where people are asking questions.
Okay.
Those were the easy first ones.
Okay. I'm sure that's going to be useful for someone out there who's got to think about how they adopt this in their organization and just want to have a benchmark of, hey, are we looking at the right stuff that makes sense for the easy things that should be a bit more automated, where the team is just getting pulled in
Yes.
as necessary, or
Start small, and I am confident that teams will then start highlighting things that are unique to your environment, that make sense, that are those SLJs that they want off their plate.
yeah. And how do you look at, if you step back and kind of, is there a way to measure this in terms of, okay, we know we're on the right track. We know we're making progress because we see X. We're seeing more of this or less of that. How do you know you're on the right track?
Your teams will tell you, number one, and your sizings for the work that you've asked them to do will tell you, because they'll be able to either complete work in a timeline that they wouldn't otherwise, or they will be able to take on more work because they'll have got stuff done and they'll have more time available to
Okay.
them.
Yeah. So there's definitely that's a productivity measures, right? In terms of,
those are the concrete things. That's how
yeah.
you go to the business and say, hey, look, I'm getting better here.
Yeah.
And then your people will tell you, because they'll be happier.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I forgot to ask at the beginning, so I'm going to ask now.
Okay.
Heather, are you a coffee drinker or a tea drinker?
Oh, coffee before, noon, and tea after.
Okay. A nuanced response. I like it.
There you go. It's
okay.
because I can't make a decision one way or the other.
No, that's totally fair. I think it's hard to pick between coffee and tea. They're both great.
They're both
but,
awesome. They play a great role in my life.
Yeah. And sometimes it just comes down to the different part of the day. We're definitely at iced tea drinking time of day and temperature right now. So
100%. Yeah.
That's where we are as we round out July. Thank you, Heather, so much. Just to remind folks, next week we'll be back with Martin Van Son on platform engineering. The week after that, on August 14th, we'll have James Urquhart on flow architectures. And August 21st, we'll have Mitra Goswami talking about generative AI as our Senior Director of Data Science. So lots of interesting topics coming up. Thank you again for tuning in. And thank you again, Heather. Have an uneventful day.
There you go. Thank you, Dormaine. Have a wonderful day.
Bye now.
Bye.